Have you seen the Grandia HD Collection? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Experience Points. Welcome back to Experience Points, a less formal, more laid-back sort of review format where I just talk about RPGs that I've been playing through, maybe haven't yet completed entirely, but I want to at least give you the heads up as whether or not I think this is worth your time. And today we're talking about the Grandia HD Collection. Grandia HD Collection, as of right now, is it's been out since yesterday, and the game is about $39.99 on the Nintendo eShop. It is a remaster of a couple of games. We're going to be talking about Grandia first, and then we'll talk about the Grandia 2 remaster a little bit after that. I did receive the collection for review. I just got the code, but Gung-Ho isn't seeing this video before I put it out. They have no guarantee, no contract with me about what I say or anything, so just throwing that out there. I did get the game for free. That said, $40 is a lot to ask for a couple of digital-only releases, because that is another thing. This is not yet getting a physical release, and who knows if we ever will. We might see something from like limited run games at some point down the road, but that is not even in discussion topic as of right now, as far as I know. So Grandia 1, I think, is overall a pretty competent port. Remaster might be overstating it a little bit though. What we have with Grandia HD is a widescreen version of the game that feels like it maybe started off as, at least as a starting point, an emulation of the PlayStation 1 version of the game, but done in a much higher internal resolution with maybe some sort of texture pack applied, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. There are a few things that set it aside from a standard emulation experience though. They did also include a dual audio support here so that you can listen in Japanese. Or in the original glorious voice acting, classic for the 90s period of time.
Oh, Justin, not you again. You just don't learn trashing my shed again.
I didn't trash it. Why won't you listen to me?
And also, for people who are in Europe, it is now supporting German and French, the written language down below where they're talking, so you can at least read that if you haven't got a chance to play this in your region before. So they did add a couple of nice new things. The widescreen is pretty nice. There are a couple of FMVs that were handled a couple of different ways. The very, very beginning intro FMV was a little lackluster in my opinion. They did that thing that a lot of YouTubers do where when they show off the 4x3 footage, they just sort of crop off the black and then add a blurry background, So they did a little bit of that, and I wasn't really super impressed by that. But then later on in the game, other cutscenes that they did appear to have been fully reanimated, and they look a lot better in my opinion. But for the most part, the game runs really well on the Nintendo Switch. I didn't really notice any frame drops or anything like that. It seems to run at a pretty solid frame rate throughout, although honestly, I'm probably not the best person to tell you whether or not that was running at a constant 30 frames or a constant 60 frames, but I will be showing off footage throughout the review so you can see that for yourself if that's the sort of thing that matters to you. And then I suppose that the real kind of elephant in the room that's probably going to be a deal breaker for some is that the texture pack that I said that they applied here. Overall, I don't think that they're terrible, but for some people who are purists, it will be, I think, a detriment to the overall experience. For those people, essentially what they've done is they've applied some sort of filter to all of the textures within the game, and it looks like a little more painstakingly with the main character sprites, where they've kind of smoothed over and rounded some of the edges. It kind of reminds me of some of the 2xi filtering that you could play on some Super Nintendo emulators, but I think it looks better in Grandia than it did ever on a Super Nintendo RPG. So it's livable for me, but I do wish that there was an option to turn it off. Also, there were some other quality of life improvements throughout the game, such as being able to control the camera using the right analog stick, which I don't believe that was something you could do with Grandia 1. I know you could control it with the shoulder buttons, but yeah, that's basically the big changes that have occurred. That said, I played it for about 4 hours and I didn't experience any bugs, any crashes. There were a couple of maybe visual hiccups, I guess I could say, that just occurred simply as a result of turning it from a 4x3 experience into a 16x9 experience, and it wasn't really all that noticeable, so I can't really hold that against the game, and I really wouldn't want to. Grandia 1 is a top-tier RPG, and if you really want to know my whole thoughts on the game, I recommend you check out my review of it, which is over here somewhere. And considering what it would cost to buy the game right now, it's not a bad deal if you consider it a $20 experience, considering this collection is $40. Now, moving on to Grandia 2 HD. This game has actually already been on PC for a couple of years now as just the Grandia 2 Anniversary Edition. They've recently rebranded it to the HD Remaster to go with this HD Collection that they're doing with Grandia 1. So it's also currently available on Steam by itself for $20. Grandia 1, by the way, is also coming to Steam here in September by itself, and I presume that will also be a $20 purchase on Steam. Overall, I feel like Grandia 2 is maybe a more overall better realized HD remaster. The game runs at a much higher resolution internally. It runs at also a pretty solid frame rate. Again, 60 or 30, I'm not sure which, but I didn't notice very many frame drops. Anyways, because Grandia 2 has already kind of been out there for a long while at this point, a lot of people already have their opinions established about what this game is and what it looks like, but as far as how it runs on the Nintendo Switch, I think that it runs really well. It feels good in the controller when you're playing it. The Japanese audio sounds fantastic.
なんて気持ちいいの。自由っていいわ。力が溢れすぎて。感じちゃうわ。
己闇の者、忌まわしき悪魔め。去れ。
何すんのよ。
I kind of prefer the Japanese audio over the original English dub just because I can't help but hear Leonardo's voice whenever I play it with the English dub. It seems like a very solid port to the Nintendo Switch. I played it for a couple of hours last night, didn't run into any noticeable graphical bugs. I know that during one of the trailers there was an issue that people spotted with some people's faces, or one person's face, one model's face being kind of weird. I didn't see that in my playthrough of the game so far, so that's good. All in all, though, for $40, it's still a pretty tough sell. Until you consider how much it costs, I guess, to buy the games physically right now, you're already basically knocking half off the cost for both of the games. And again, Grandia 1 is like a top 5 kind of RPG. Grandia 2 is definitely like a top 30 RPG in my book. And I can at least say that the Grandia HD collections don't mangle the experience. They're still extremely playable. They're both extremely fun to play. Personally, I feel like Gung Ho is really straddling that line of where I'd be comfortable recommending it. And that's probably by design, because they're trying to get the most for their games that they can, obviously. And I can't say that I blame them. Honestly, I hope that this remaster does well, because I would love to see Gung Ho also maybe revitalize the Lunar series, or maybe even extend the series. Maybe they could make a Grandia 4 at some point, or maybe a Lunar 3 would be really excellent. But before they can do any of that, they got to make sure that they are self-sustaining. And I think by remastering some of these classics that they got from Game Arts, well, I think that they can't go wrong, especially with the way that they're going. Overall, I feel like they did a pretty good job, except for the caveats that I mentioned before. Again, those being the inability to turn off the texture pack, which I hope that they include later on. Also, I do think it would be really nice if they could add an additional difficulty option for Grandia 1 like they did for Grandia 2. And who knows, maybe they'll do that in a release update sometime down the road. I gotta say that I'm pretty impressed with how Gung Ho is handling the HD remaster of Grandia 2. They ended up doing some additional stuff for the HD collection, and they went ahead and pushed that out to the Steam version of the games, that everybody who already had the anniversary edition of Grandia is getting those updates and those quality of life improvements. So that's awesome. So with all that said, yeah, I think unless you're a diehard purist, then this is a fantastic way to play the games. And if you are one of those diehard purists, most likely you've already got the games on PlayStation or on Dreamcast, and in that case, maybe they're not for you. But if you're one of those people who hasn't had a chance to play through these yet, I'd say This is a really good opportunity for you to play them on the Nintendo Switch for a decent price and decide if you want to become one of those purists who goes out and gets the physical copies down the road. This is an excellent way to do that, and I'd like to welcome you to the Grandia fandom.